Verse 77. The triple world of existence is no more than thought construction, which is discriminated by the twofold Svabhava of imagination and relative knowledge. But when, within the mind, a turning away from the course of sense objects and the ego soul takes place, then we have suchness. So the triple world of existence, this is everything that there is. The self, the individual, and the external world, and the relationship between the two. That covers everything. And we've been told that this is no more than thought construction. They're just notions, concepts, ideas, the beliefs, the belief in a self and an individual, belief in the world. Given these two, there's a dynamic between the two. And that dynamic is all based on ideas. Ideas about the world, ideas about who we are, all infused with passions and emotions and pain. This is our imagination and relative knowledge, the twofold Svabhava. Relative knowledge is a conventional understanding, cultural understanding, religious understanding, scientific understanding, and imagination is how we think things are. So this is the basic discrimination that is made. The basic dynamic tension which keeps it all going, the dynamic tension between the individual here and the world out there. Tension based on physical survival, with a whole slew of add-ons based on neuroses, anxieties, fears and desire. But when a turning away from the course of sense objects and the ego soul takes place, in other words, when we see this, when we become a witness not only to the external world, but towards the inner world, the world of the so-called self, then there's a turning away, there's a distance, there's a distancing, what's sometimes called a dispassion towards self and the world sets in. We're no longer getting caught up in the emotional whirlpools of the self and the world. When we've got some distance from it and a turning away from it, then we've found the truth of suchness. And this is spiritual practice or enlightenment practice. This is the work of the Bodhisattva that was described in the previous verse. The Bodhisattva is described as compassion itself, because the Bodhisattva does not act in accordance with notions of self or other. Verse 78 tells us, the sun, the moon, the lamplight, the elements and the gems, each functions in its own way without discrimination, and so does the Buddha's nature work on its own accord. When the Bodhisattva is successful in his practice, then he's a Buddha. And this nature works of its own accord. You might wonder, well, if the Bodhisattva is not working prompted by the interests of self or other, then what's the motivation for the Bodhisattva to act? And this is what verse 78 tells us. The sun, the moon, the lamplight, the elements and the gems, each functions in its own way without discrimination. They're basically doing their thing. They're not discriminating between self and other. They're not getting caught up in imagination and relative knowledge. But it's a curious list, isn't it? The sun, the moon, the lamplight, the elements and the gems. I suppose most of them are sources of light, the sun, the moon, lamplight, and the gems, although strictly speaking they're kind of reflections of light, aren't they? The gems and the moon. The elements, well, the sun, the moon, the lamplight illuminate the elements, and the gems reflect back the light, don't they? So there's an apparent dynamic going on, but everything is just happening as it is, without discrimination. And in the same way, the Bodhisattva gets on simply with what needs to be got on with. What motive driving force is there? Well, there's the realization of suchness, coming to a dead end. Suchness, okay, well, what do you do with that? What do you do with suchness? Well, from that suchness, everything is possible. All tasks can be faced. All obligations can be carried out. The Bodhisattva is a human being who's operating at the complete fulfillment of our human potential, the complete realization of our human potential.